What is going up, everybody? BobbyFi and Sheets back on, I don't know what coronavirus day of lockdown it is for all of you. We tried to get ahead of it over here. So we're actually on sort of day 6. There's been 2 trips made by people outside in the building in our household since then. And those trips are with gas masks and rubber gloves. You can call us overreactive. These are not people who would generally be reactive to something like this. We're gonna get into some interesting stuff with Sheets, some things we touched on about the stock market yesterday and different trends there. I do want to give a really quick brief update that my mom, it doesn't look like she has coronavirus, which in an odd way, depending on how you think this death rate's going to go, could be good or bad news because she has some sort of an infectious disease. She's seen these specialists, but they're obviously overwhelmed with corona stuff. So every time she's stuck in this hotel near them, she has to wait hours and hours and then maybe or maybe not get seen. So she's stuck in the hotel and she can't leave the hotel until after. So it's not really that inconvenient for her. But it is certainly like a little nerve-wracking just during these times. And obviously it's good that she's not being asked to wait in the hospital anymore, even with the cautions they're taking. Another good family friend, one of my closest friend's mothers, also is a member of my family. He's my close friend, but he's actually my uncle, but he's a little younger than I am. Anyway, his mom is now isolated, and she showed up with a test for something else that she finally got results for. And they couldn't tell what the results were. They called it spots on the test. I don't really want to get into all the details of it, but they think that there's a chance that there's something could happen with her. So she's isolated. It's a huge inconvenience to her. I feel for her. She's a wonderful person. It's a tough situation, but people are still ticking. We're trying to make the most out of this. And yeah, that's just a quick update from my side of the world. It feels disturbing what's happening. Oh, the last thing I did have not a note, but a mental note that I wanted to touch. And I don't want to overly be alarmistic to people, but I think it's important to point out that there's a guy who died in the U.S. He got tested before this was becoming a common thing because 2 of the people on his cruise had been tested. The cruise was between February 11th and February 21st, so it'd be sometime in that range. So they just decided that they associated him with that. He tested negative. He started showing terrible symptoms weeks later, which would have, I guess, been a week ago that he got retested, and has now passed away 37 days later. When he retested, he tested positive. He was 60 some odd years old, I believe. I just want to throw out there to people that even don't trust the test, don't trust the numbers, don't go crazy with it, but just assume that this is bad. People have it and are spreading it. And just being outside to me is just a really foolish mistake right now. But on the other side of it, maybe the lack of death toll is a good sign. I just think that it's not one we really have a feel for yet. Let's talk about it in a month or so when it may have all shown up. And realistically, I think that we're going to get the feeling of a complete lockdown really soon of everyone. I just can't see how it doesn't come to that point other than it shutting down the economy, which is basically happening anyway. So with that, I just want to say, stay home, stay safe. Don't believe what you're hearing. Don't freak out about the impossible alternative. Just try to stay informed and read between the lines. There was an interesting moment today on the opening of this Trump thing when the lady was saying, yesterday, I think in the afternoon, she said there's 4% of the people who've been tested in South Korea have tested positive, only 4%. And she was saying that was positive. Now it's up to 7% and it's only been hours. And that was a place that we thought had done a good job containing this. So I just want to throw out that let's just err on the side of being like stupid cautious, like really stupidly cautious. There's absolutely no like, other than your job and everything, which is, look, anybody who doesn't understand all the aftermath with all this, anybody who tells you that you're fired and you don't have any way of getting your job back afterwards, unless the job doesn't exist, you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands if that job still exists and you left because you're going home. I'm sorry to keep rambling, but I did have one more really important story that I actually felt like I didn't know if I wanted to share. Then I was talking to Sheets pre-show and I realized I kind of share everything, but I still wasn't going to say this one. But my ex-girlfriend, who we've been together off and on for like 12 years. It's mostly been casual since the beginning of everything. Long story. She moved over to Europe. She was living in Amsterdam temporarily while she was waiting for her visas to go through. She has to leave the country at certain points for certain amounts of time. So she had to go to Split, Croatia by herself. She loves traveling internationally by herself. She thought she'd have to spend a couple weeks there. No big deal. She found out 2 days ago that she's pregnant. I'm not the father. This is, but she's now stuck in Split, Croatia by herself, 5.5 weeks pregnant, really not knowing what to do or where she can go. She can't fly anywhere. She can't travel anywhere from there. She doesn't really want to travel anywhere, but she's sort of locked up in a hole there. And it's kind of a nerve-wracking feeling to be, you know, a attractive young white woman who's not even visibly pregnant, but just out there and on her own right now, and just sort of in a world that doesn't speak the same language. It just goes to show you, like, these things are going to inconvenience in so many ways that are beyond just, oh, so many people die from it. There's a lot of things out there that are worrisome. So just want to give some thoughts out to her. I'm not a religious man, but I mean, those people say thoughts and prayers. Those are the things I'm sort of thinking about, that I'm worried about. I'm not worried about myself right now, but that's just where my head's at right now today.
So one thing I'm gonna not share that I'll talk to you about off air, but everything's good on my end over here. One thing I'm just going on, it's not a big deal. I just really don't want to jinx it. How about that? But everybody's healthy and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to talk about something a little lighter, a couple of bits of news, and then I want to follow up on something from yesterday. Then I want to get into, just kind of talking to Bobby about where he came from, because we did the same thing with me yesterday. But on the heels of our discussion yesterday about where we talked about my poker career, and we spent like a good amount of time on that, I got really, really juiced up to play poker. And in concurrence with that, a Facebook friend of mine, not a Facebook friend, a friend of mine who was on Facebook, he set up a home game on PokerStars and got like 45 people in and played a tournament. And we played just like, the old days, whatever it was. And I ended up getting fourth for like 800. So I was really psyched to like move chips around and all that kind of stuff, and kibitz in the chat box and stuff like that. So he
still got it, guys. He still got it.
Yeah. I'm still really able to beat really bad players. So that's always good, So that's one thing. Second thing I wanted to mention, I throw out there, we talked about this a little bit off air, is the one thing that's still running right now, pretty much without a lot of interruption, is horse racing. And I alluded to this yesterday, that I do horse racing, and I have for 17 years on a pretty high level, as another kind of side thing that I do. I never ever really like taught it or described how it works and all that stuff. And maybe, just maybe, I'll do some kind of teach-in or something like that with the horse racing stuff sooner than later, especially when no one else has anything else going on. And certainly when we get our site rolling, I think I'm going to probably finally do something, organized with respect to the teaching of how the sheets work and how horse racing works and how horse betting works and the different things involved with that. The other thing I want to just kind of follow up on from yesterday is, only because I started with this yesterday, we talked about something stock market related really, really near the end, where I described how it's not as easy as it seems. And the example from the other day, that yesterday I said, well, everybody knew the casinos were going to close. Why didn't 2 days ago everybody short these things? Because they were down 20% yesterday. Wasn't that so obvious? And it's just not exactly that easy, because at any one moment, you believe that all the information is priced into the stock, and you don't know how much is priced in, how much there is to go. And I'll use even today as an example, right? So today, I'm just looking, this is not even a real-time quote, it's like a Yahoo quote, right? That you see, like, all these hotels are down 30%, like Hilton's down 30%, Hyatt's down 38%, Host Hotels down 12%, cruise lines down 28%. And I know people are looking, you're like, well, duh, right? Why wouldn't you think that Royal Caribbean cruise would be down freaking 30%? Nobody's taking cruises. There are coronaviruses all over these places. Of course it was going to be down 30%. But if that's the case, why didn't everybody short these things the other day? You know what I mean? There's no new information. You know what I mean? Everybody last week, if I said, what do you think's going to happen to hotels? They're like, oh my God, they're going to get crushed. What do you think's going to happen to cruise lines? Probably going to zero, right? So why is it not that easy? Why didn't everybody like take Royal Caribbean cruise, for example, when it was 26 just yesterday? You could have, all you geniuses who were like, oh my God, how obvious is this? You could have all got into it yesterday and shorted it at noon at whatever, 26, and made a fortune. Why is that not happening? Because it's just not that easy. Because at any moment, when a stock price, I'll give you another chance. How about this? The stock market right now is giving you another chance. They're telling you that Royal Caribbean cruise is $19.75, okay? They're letting you either buy it or short it or do nothing, okay? And I'll put it in time. I'll ask people again, what do you think is going to happen with Royal Caribbean cruises? What do you think is going to happen to the cruise industry? Probably 100% of the people are going to say that, oh my God, the cruise industry is screwed. Okay, great. So why isn't everybody shorting it? Why is it not 1? Why is it not 3? Because the stock price reflects what people's perception is of its value in the future. So much of what this 1977 means is, yeah, we know that, the cruise liner is screwed, but maybe there's hope for it to rebound in the future. Okay. So what all of those psychologies are playing into this one price tag of 1960, and you honestly don't know whether this 1960 is undervalued or overvalued. You know what I mean? So it's not as easy to say this industry sucks, let's short everything, because every price tag here is a reflection of the sum of information available to everybody and everybody's interpretation of that information. So before people say, well, what do you think? I have no idea. I don't have an edge. I have no idea whether the next move on these things are up or down. I really don't. You tell me what I think in the industry? Okay, I'll tell you what my 5-year-old says. I don't even have a 5-year-old. I'm using it as an example. The cruise industry sucks, okay? Will it come back? Maybe. Is this price for this particular stock reflective of what the stock is worth? I really don't know, okay? So it's very, very hard. How about that?
That makes sense to me.
Okay, so we're gonna get this off of my screen.
Okay, oh, sorry. Can I get to 2 other things? And I don't want to, again,
go for it.
So one of the other big things that's happening that's being underreported, but being reported if you look far enough, this is what I said was going to happen. A lot of deaths that are being attributed to this. This is why you should worry about the death rate in addition to other reasons. They're taking a lot of pneumonia deaths and other deaths because that's what it can cause. They're chalking it up as pneumonia, or they're saying something else, or it was another infection. We're not getting real information. I'm just trying to stress this. I'm not trying to create a panic, but it is important to know the realities of what's going on. And this information is coming out. By next week, it'll be out there. You're never going to get a correct, accurate assessment of exactly what's happening on this. And I just want to say, I'm not trying to slander the government or anything like that. I just want to point that out, that you cannot imagine that even just for the protection of panic's sake, they can't announce the things that they probably are feeling, and we should just take their actions as a sign.
Yeah. Ooh, I exit full screen out of this one. What is this? Yeah. The one thing I will, I don't want to get into it, but let's pick up on again, kind of the future. Again, I'd like to presume that at some point we're going to be putting out a good amount of DFS content, or horse racing, or a combination of sports betting and DFS, or whatever it is, however, in whatever form it is. And again, what we did yesterday and what I would do today is just do a quick kind of thing to put on the site, sort of, where we talk, where we introduce the people. Now, again, a lot of people know Bobby. A lot of people don't know where he came from and where his skill set was kind of derived. And I'll tell you something really funny. So I don't want to get into it, but just for the hell of it, something you had told me yesterday, you had mentioned that in at a poker, you at one point we were talking about maybe backing you, and because of your relationship with somebody else, we didn't do it. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to check my old emails and let's see if I can find any information on this.
You called me, I can remember the conversation. You called me very clearly saying, I'm sorry, we can't do it. Johnny.
No, that's cool. But I thought it'd be kind of fun to pull up emails if I found any, right? And unfortunately, I couldn't find them from this computer. I think in my office I might be able to find some. But what I did see, I found, no, it's actually pretty bad. I found, when I searched for your name, in my computer, just search for BobbyFi, going back to it, all I found was a
here it is. I'll call that.
Maybe I shouldn't say it, but our mutual friend, right? I had when I suspected that there was some untoward stuff going on, we get an audit or something of his account, and I actually carved out the stuff that was supposed to be sent to Sheets versus the stuff that was supposed to be Johnny Backs and stuff going back. I would deleted all that, and what you're left with after that is kind of the illegal, unauthorized transactions in somebody's account, right? And so littered throughout that was back and forth between BobbyFi or something like that, and there's other account, which is obviously the account he probably used to play cash, didn't tell us about or something like that. And so it's funny. So that's where I saw the BobbyFi name came up, but I wasn't able to actually find the details of the the backing stuff. Because you know what? It probably was on Instant Messenger AIM or something, which I don't even have anymore, which all that stuff was deleted. But I always find it kind of funny. Like, it's so funny that people ask me from time to time, you know, you should publish some of your email. And I shouldn't. One of these days, I should put a whole thing together, the different emails I got from different people and all this stuff that went on with backing and stuff like that. And I would obviously carve out the stuff that was like really bad, but there's like some really funny stuff. And there's also some really cool emails from people who ended up making, like, these are kind of fun, that I don't want to make it about me again, but I should show you the people that we turned down for backing. I should show you some of the emails where we turned down people for backing that ended up making like 30 million in like tournaments and stuff like that. Yeah. And those are kind of fun to pull up, where I'm like, I don't like give names or whatever, like XYZ. No, we don't. You know, we think you flat out of the big blind too much. We don't want to play. We don't want to back you or something like that. Or
no, this was what you had. So here's the emails were on 4/14/2010, 4/16/2010.
Okay.
17/2010.
Nice.
It was me sending you my hand histories.
Okay.
I don't have our phone conversation, obviously.
Obviously.
We had 2 phone conversations, and one was like, yeah, we look like we're a go. And then I have a message to our mutual friend saying, hey, what's happening? I thought we were I was going this, what do you think this is holding them up? He's like, I don't know. They're usually pretty quick. I think it was like, I shared like just like 4 hand histories. I think I sent, like, it was like, I won the 75, whatever. They were good tournaments, but you said that, you thought it was good stuff. And then the verbal part was that you said we were a go, and then we had a conversation shortly after saying Bax didn't feel comfortable.
Hey, you know what? You saved money.
Maybe. I think I did. I actually think
you got to kick all your winnings for yourself. You're probably better off.
I actually did pretty well right after that, so that's actually a good point.
Yeah. So wait a minute. Okay. So most people that are in DFS, right? Either, and you tell me where you came. Most people either were poker players or like athletes, or like a combination of the two. And there are also some people in DFS that were just kind of like just data guys that don't know anything about sports, that were just like kind of data guys, you know, whatever it is. But I know that you play poker, and I just kind of I get a sense that you used to play sports also, you know. So tell me where, you know, where you came from, how you got into gambling, how you got into poker, how you got into all this mess.
Sadly, this part is going to be more interesting than the actual rest of my life since then. I stopped working. I stopped going to school when I was 13. I started working when I was 14.
Really?
On a boat, yeah. First I worked for a telecom startup that I was helping them in the warehouse. It was just a few friends of ours, which actually turned into a very big company. So had I stayed with them and not decided to explore my younger life when I was 14, I would have probably been a very rich man today. Well, a very, very rich man. And instead of being
so what we're saying is the BobbyFi stuff. You were a high school dropout. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying more. I didn't go to high school.
Oh, wow.
I was ahead, but we were homeschooled because I was traveling my whole life. So our family liked to be gone our whole, half the summer. So we had a few friends who were teachers. They were hired to take care of the children. And then there was the older people, sort of the permanent people on the boat. And then there would be different waves of different groups of friends coming in. Now, to give a little background, our family, it's going to sound very communal-ish. And I guess technically there's a communal aspect of it, which is really nice actually. But these guys built a boat back together, and everybody was broke. And I think it was 1970s. It was a group of about 20 people that expanded very quickly to a group of about 60 or 70. And those people have all had children through the years, and their children were friends with their children. And when I grew up with 22 other kids, basically as if they were my brothers and sisters, because our families just basically didn't want to stop being friends, and they worked together, they traveled together. And they just, that's just the way it is. It's a little bit of a different situation. I'm sure I'd get some heat on this if I was talking about it from some other people. But
this is amazing. I mean, this is I never knew this. This is awesome.
It's different stuff. And then so when I was done, I started working on a boat when I was from 14 to 17. Well, I guess it was 18. I stopped, and then I had to go back to City College because I was like, okay, I want to see that I'm not a total idiot. I know that I always did well in school. I never paid attention to the school, even though I was homeschooled for most of my life. I did go to public school when I was little. But then I was like, okay, I need to figure this out. I need to go back. People telling me it's going to be weird. I traveled around the world. I've met a million people. It's not going to be weird for me socially. I knew that part for sure. But I was terrified about what was going to happen. So I remember getting tested for everything. And I'd never done algebra before. I just started algebra. That's where I was. I was way ahead on everything else. But I was always ahead of my age group that I grew up with in math. So they sort of just stopped me at some point. And then I stopped going to school when I was 13. So I basically tested in my math part to, try to placement, and they called me into the principal's office. That we don't usually do this. We usually say placement, but you got every question right. And you say here that you haven't gone to school. And I remember that the questions all made sense. I was pretty sure I did well on the test, but it's weird when you don't, it's just figuring out a different way of doing things. It probably took me 10 minutes to figure it out, and then I would go through it really quickly. I feel like I'm not trying to brag, but I'm trying to say that, so I basically got me thinking just this sort of the things that I liked about my brain. I'm in college. I wanted to pursue something that was a little bit, I thought I had a good analytical skill set. My grandfather, my family around me always said that I had really good instincts for new trends and businesses and things like that, because I had been talking to them about stuff since I was a little kid. So I just wanted to sort of do something a little different. And from that, I went to school for a little bit, met my baby's mama, who we were together for many years and still a wonderful part of my life. And we have a great daughter from it. But we met there in school. Eventually, she ended up even taking some time off to travel with me and my family one summer, where I was able to take the summer off for my sort of in between school phase. Anyway, that transitioned really quickly into, okay, I wanted to do something. I knew I loved being on boats, but I wanted to do something creative with my brain. So the family and friends of family, because we have a huge group, when that happens, you're going to have, and everyone had it wasn't successful. They all met from a mutual place of being unsuccessful in their whatever 20s and back in the day. But that somehow through this process of building a boat together and sailing, just down the, up the coast a little bit, turned into sailing around the world. So I sailed around the world about 6 or 7 times. And the boating part has been a huge part of my life, but I was interested in business. So I got into some of these, some were family businesses, some were businesses that were started by people who were connections of families. Some of those did well. Some of them didn't do terribly well, but I was doing well, making a good living. And my family gambles. They like to just straight gamble. My grandfather's literally has been going since he was, 21 years old, I guess. Since he could find a place to gamble, he was gambling.
Really?
He's a big craps guy. Loves craps and blackjack. And it's like a social event for him. Like he has his buddies there with him, it's a good, but he's always made money at it, which is sort of weird. And he has no logic behind it. He understands that he's just a lucky guy who at best is a guy who just quits every time he's ahead. That's sort of what he is.
Right.
But so I was always interested in finding an edge. I tried to start sports betting, and I was doing actually fairly well with like close to a 60% rate, which if you're not doing it on huge volume is not going to get you a ton of money, but it is a good edge to have. And I was mostly betting NFL and NBA. I think NFL, you could probably get a little higher. In college football, you certainly could have been much higher back then. But I did okay at it. And then people started, I started seeing the poker stuff around. Rounders was a movie I really liked. It's the typical story in that sense, I guess, somewhat, but I became fascinated by just watching all these hands. And it just became clear to me that I didn't think that people were, everything I read, including like the old books, like Doyle Bruns, all the one thing I could was just aggression, just pure aggression. And I felt like that was really lacking back in those days. So I started off playing, and, we were about to have a baby that we decided to have, and we were home with her, and I started playing online more. I was playing some live a little bit, and I just was probably running really good. I was winning from pretty early on. And finally, at one point, maybe a few months into it, I had made more than I would make that year in my job, which was a very good job as a as a supply chain manager for a booming company where I was really the inventory manager. And my task was sort of to find everything around the world that was for not ground support equipment. I did that before that. It was for power infrastructure equipment. So large generators, transformers. And it was my goal, it was my job. They had tasked me with a job to find everyone in the world over a certain size of each type of equipment. And we created a database, me and my friend who builds computers. And that was my past. And then I jumped into, okay, I'm making more money at poker. If I can play poker, my daughter, I want her to be able to have the same luxuries that I had when I was little. I'd like her to be able to travel with my family, especially now, even when she was young. And people have passed, life has changed a little bit. People are getting older and people are passing. But to try and keep this life up that I felt like I benefited from so greatly for her, I thought the best way to do it actually, and this may sound irresponsible for other people, was to really try and play poker. So I had about, I had X number of dollars in cash, but I decided I'm only going to risk about $35,000 and just go to Vegas. And I had plenty more online. I always dabbled, but I was just like, okay, I want to give it one real shot. And I ran good that summer, and I made about 10X on that, throughout the summer. And then just kept going back and doing well consistently. Those were, other than the World Series, I would play a ton of EPTs. I would play at least like 4 or 5 years. I liked the traveling aspect. I could always bring my buddy or friends or whatever. It was a really fun part of it. And I only had a couple final tables, but a bunch of really good results. Just like never bad, you know. And then on the side games, you could just make a killing because people would get hammered in Monaco and on these events. It was just a good time. I know I just ran through a bunch of different things, but that was how poker started. And then
no, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Yeah, real quickly, thanks. I appreciate it because it feels weird talking about it.
I know you're doing great.
I was at an event. It was like a celebrity event, but one person from online got to play at each table, and it was like a freeze out. So if you finish, you have to win a 6-man table, and then you advance. But it's basically with the equivalent of I think like a 50K buy-in. It was a huge tournament. But I just played. I ended up busting on the first day. I ended up going out in third. Didn't even make it back to the thing. Made one horrible mistake. But in that, I met who we were not good friends, but I met Taylor Cabby, who started Card Runners with the other guys. You know, all those guys, and he was telling me about this new site he had called Draft Day that we were talking about things I liked, and he's like, "Oh, this is
who'd you say, Taylor?
Taylor Cabby, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know if I pronounced his last name. I never pronounced his last name.
No, you kind of like went out for a second, but I knew who you were talking about though.
Yeah. So he's a really, really sweet guy, by the way. And I don't know him well, but he wanted to go to dinner that night. So we're alone in London. We're out in London, and we were in the outskirts. Where they filmed this was on the studio they have for whatever it is, Sky TV there. So we were like totally on the outskirts of London, and to get all the way back in the city didn't feel like we want. So we went to dinner and we just were talking, and he just said, "I get this impression you'd be great at this." So the site was Draft Day. It was one of the other DFS sites that was alternative to DraftKings and FanDuel, which were around but weren't the same things they are now, obviously. So I started playing on Draft Day, and you get a $5 free entry thing, and I just said, okay, I'm gonna just mess around. You know, it's $5. You play a heads-up match, and that's if you win, you get to keep $10. That's how they give you the $5. So I played of course, being the great genius at management of bankrolls like I am, I decided to play the $10 tournament with my $10. And I finished third. It was the biggest tournament I think it was the biggest one they'd had to that point in terms of people. I finished third out of, I don't know how many, but I won like $10,000. So immediately I had like a small bankroll to start dabbling around with. And I kept cruising. There were some downs, but Draft Street, all the old ones. You know what site I made an absolute fortune on? God, I can't think of the name right now. There was a site. God, I can't believe. I'm gonna have to look it up at some point. But it was the site where you could pick players, but you didn't have to put any. There's no salary attached. You're basically just picking your best team, and people just were just completely awful at this. I don't know how they could have been so awful. So I did really well. Anyway, I did well at it, and I just kept going, and I've done as well as I've done, or actually better than anything else. So in that, I also ended up starting a site so I started a site that I wanted for DFS. The problem was I started it literally, I had the foresight to try and start it before I actually knew how to be good at it. So I was still figuring it out as I was going, but I was trying to be clear about that. In that we were mostly just doing write-ups every day, recommended plays for free. Then I was like, I met some guys at some live finals. I was doing really well for a period of time. I had back in the day with baseball, I had quit my job again, and similar to poker, I gave myself the same amount. I had moved in with my other girlfriend, and I put 35,000. So I'm going to put that into it, and I was running down near 7,000 or 8,000 left in that 35,000. Probably a little bit bankroll management related issues for me. This was about a month into it, and then I hit the 100K on the DraftKings tournament, and then the next day won a seat in they used to call it the King of the Hill. You play for 10K every day, but you can only win your way in, and you have to come in first in that tournament to win your way in.
Yeah.
So I made that. I lose my first match, so I get nothing. But then I won the seat the next day, and then I played for 8 days in a row, which means I won 80,000 from that one. And then I won. There was only back then there was once a week there was 100K first tournament, but I won the second in a row. The next one I won for baseball, and this was all baseball season. And then it just was sort of off to the races. It was a beautiful time. And with the site that I started at, the people I was looking at, I wasn't trying to hire other people, but I met this guy who was sort of a wild, funny guy. If you're a DFS person in the industry, you definitely know who this person is. Because so me and him, I said, look, man, why don't you come do this with me? You're an accountant right now. You don't need to quit, but you're making more money at DFS than you are at your day job. Let's really make something. Let's make a go out of this. And me and him were really good friends, and he's a sweetheart of a guy, and we may not agree on everything, but So I hired him, and then I didn't pay him, but we were sitting there trying to build this thing, and all of a sudden we start getting tons of people reading us, and we just noticed we were getting a lot more nobody was paying us anything, but we were just getting more traction. So all of a sudden we get a call from the people at RG, and I get a call and they said, can you, we really want you to work for us. I hadn't reached out to them. And to me, that was kind of like a big thing at the time. I sort of felt vindicated because you sort of feel like an outsider, even though you're doing your own thing in the industry. And I said, you got to get my friend. You got to hire my friend. I promise you, you're going to end up having him for a lot longer than you have me. Because you know me, I'll probably try to start something else at some point. And they said, okay, who's your friend? And let's get you guys to do a couple shows for us and we'll see what it goes. And they loved him, of course, because it was Grant Nefer, for those of you who in the DFS industry. So, and then from there it was RG, and now it's me and Chase are going to make a killing at whatever it is this turns out to be, because right now no one knows what anything is in the world. But that's sort of a really quick synopsis of my history.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I didn't really know too much about the. I knew you didn't grow up in the traditional environment, but I didn't even realize like how that's awesome. And it's actually also a good. It's a statement about how family and family matters, and having a close group of people matters, and how traditional education is may not exactly be what it's cracked up to be. It's you can become really, really successful if you, number one, have good raw brain power, and also just have a decent enough support system of people that care about you, that are willing to support your development, even if it's not in the most traditional of fashions. So it's funny, like that's awesome. I'll tell you this really funny thing, how everything kind of collides. So you mentioned you got involved with RG. So I'll tell a really quick story about RG. Not even RG. So I don't know, he's never going to be listening to this, but for those of you that don't remember, Cal, like from way back in the day, right? So I'll remember this conversation. I got a phone call back in 2005 it was a conference call from Cal and Adam Small, right? They were starting this thing called Pocket Fives, which they were saying, listen, we're starting this thing where we want to rank players, rank poker players. And we think that they'll get some traction. People like to see people get ranked and stuff like that. I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, who do you think should be ranked whatever? So the original the original Pocket Fives ranks were basically what I told these guys on the phone. And I was like, well, you guys are good. Well, I'm not going to count me. And they're like, well, you know anybody from UB? I'm like, yeah, these guys are pretty good, or whatever it is. So and then you fast forward like all this time, like all the success they had over there, and then you're going into with RG, and it's so funny how smart people just kind of just develop the way I guess they're supposed to, in a way. Good combination of brains and luck is always it usually produces decent results.
No, I mean it is interesting. Like I mean it's been a funny thing, because I did a lot of things in which I was just thinking about this, like with Cal and those guys. It's really incredible, because it was a great it took great foresight, but also it was like he was the right person to be doing what
I have a question. How did you, like, one thing, again, if you don't mind me asking, so when you said, well, I got into DFS, I started winning, like because I'm like different than, I mean, how did you learn how to do it? You know what I mean? Like, did you just kind of figure it out on your own, or did you have people that knew more than you that helped you learn, or was there like stuff? Was there like content? Was there stuff you could read and stuff like that, or you were just?
I didn't go on RG. Sheets, are you there? I think I might have lost you there for a minute.